This is Pete Moore on Halo Talks NYC. I have the pleasure of bringing in from San Francisco, Nick Allen, founder of Sunnyside. We're going to talk about mindful drinking. We're going to talk about moderation. We're going to talk about playing hard, working hard, and making sure you stay in check at the same time. So welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So, look, setting up a business like this, a for-profit business, talk about how this kind of evolved. Was it from a personal frustration? Was it from friends? And how you built it into a business and not just, an app that you're helping people.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sunnyside, I'll just kind of start with our mission and then get into a little bit of the founding story. We're seeking to help anyone who regularly drinks alcohol improve their overall health and wellness by being more mindful about the role that alcohol plays in kind of their general health routines. Unlike most of the other apps and services in the alcohol health space today, what makes Sunnyside really different is that we're focused on moderation and mindfulness without the pressure to quit entirely. And so our whole thesis is that there's a huge population of people who are, drinking maybe more than a healthy amount, have that inkling that maybe they want to make a change to their drinking habits, and yet who are not open or interested in the idea of complete sobriety. And so in the past, they've been presented with only options which are kind of hit rock bottom, admit you're a problem drinker, and then go on this kind of white-knuckled path towards complete sobriety, or kind of do nothing and go it alone. And so the Sunnyside is really seeking to fill the gap for folks who are in that middle ground, not interested in sobriety, or at least maybe not interested yet, and yet kind of seeking to make a change and to bring drinking into balance with their overall health. We think about, tracking and managing drinking, more akin to kind of how we've learned to manage diet and exercise and mindfulness as a proactive component of our wellness routines, rather than something that we wait until it's a big issue in our lives before we do something about.
Yeah. Do you think there's been a paradigm shift where people are willing to admit, that they're an excessive drinker or go a little harder than they should? I remember the doctor back when I was in investment banking, they asked how many drinks you had a week, and
right.
It's probably 10 to 20, and you kind of said that with a straight face and didn't realize that was not the right number on the consumption side. Do you think maybe the focus on mental health, the focus on people, asking for help, that's been a big benefactor of where you're at?
I think so. I think behaviors around alcohol and awareness around the impact that alcohol has on our health is really growing. And that has a profound impact on kind of the frequency and the prevalence of alcohol in the conversations around wellness. And so I think that people are becoming more interested in all of the things that go into their body, kind of taking maybe a little bit of a closer lens at the things that kind of have impact on things like sleep and on stress and anxiety levels and on kind of activity and productivity, et cetera. And I think that that's bringing drinking into the forefront of the conversation, where in the past it was something that we kind of hid away or, were ashamed of until, maybe it became a big enough problem in our lives that people around us noticed, and we had this kind of intervention mentality. And I think that's a really healthy change when we think about the kind of landscape of alcohol in the context of our health. So many of us are regularly drinking, and alcohol actually has such a profound impact on our wellness and how we feel and the quality of our and health span of our lives, that we really have to bring this into a proactive lens. And so I definitely do think that that's happening, and you're seeing that with people buying low and no alcohol drinks and the explosion of those categories. And you're seeing the conversation bubbling up in popular wellness dialogues where I think it wasn't 5 or 10 years ago.
I was always shocked that I guess it was when we were back in school that old Duels was the non-alcoholic drink, and I'm like, look, I'd rather have a Gatorade, or a Diet Coke or something if I'm not going to get any of the alcohol. I wasn't sure that beer was my primary choice of drink. But there's a company, Athletic something or other, Athletic Brews maybe or something. That's $500 million business, which I'm shocked by.
Totally, it's crazy. And it's the artisanal approach to low and no alcohol is totally exploding.
Yeah, and interestingly, marketing the category, that's for sure.
Totally.
So
interestingly with them, just as one quick aside, they've done a really good job of, they're selling to not fully sober people for the most part, right? Mm-hmm. These are performance-oriented individuals who are looking to alternate in low and no alcohol beverages, and yet are not kind of teetotaling, self-defined sober folks for the most part. These are people who are really embracing mindful drinking as a lifestyle. And that's going a long way. I think that brand is one that's a great indication of the explosion of the space.
So when you're interacting with your app, do you actually have a coach assigned to you, or it's strictly a digital relationship?
It's kind of, choose your own adventure. So the Sunnyside experience at its kind of base, and I'll get back to kind of where we started and a little bit more of the origin story, which I think is relevant here.
Yeah.
But at its base, what we're doing is we're helping people create an accountability roadmap for themselves on a weekly basis. And so customers come in, we suggest recommended targets for them for drink totals and dry days based on their kind of baselines and starting points. And we help them taper their drinks down slowly towards a kind of healthier level. Many of our members are just doing kind of this automated experience of creating a weekly plan and then getting daily nudges to stay on track and to kind of log their consumption over time. But we do have a human coaching experience as well as a member-to-member community that others are really engaging with and getting a lot of value out of. And so if you want to be interacting with a coach, if you want to have a little bit more of that kind of like hand-holding guided experience, it's there for you. But if you prefer to kind of operate in single player mode and kind of manage your own targets, and that's enough for you to kind of get the data and understand the how drinking less impacts other areas of your health, that's also kind of a totally viable path with us as well.
So take us back to what the genesis of this was.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm someone who's had my own ups and downs with alcohol for really since I started exploring drinking when I was kind of in my teens. I grew up in San Francisco, and it was a fast-paced high school life where alcohol got introduced into my life pretty early. I also grew up in a household with two parents who were in recovery from alcoholism. So both of my parents had kind of that rock bottom moment when it came to drinking. They ultimately let their habits get away from them, and thankfully for me, they made the decision to get sober and have been in AA and kind of gone that traditional route and haven't had a drink in about 30 years. And so I'm kind of starting to explore my own relationship with alcohol with the backdrop of the learnings of my parents. They never pushed on me sobriety as like the only path or that this was what I had to do. But instead, they really helped me to understand and recognize my own habits and tendencies when it comes to to drinking, frankly. And it became clear to me early on that if I'm not being thoughtful about the role that alcohol plays in my life, it can sneak up on me pretty quickly. And sometimes finding that off switch is not always the easiest thing when I start. And that's something that I've kind of held with me for a really long time. And so I like to think that my path to designing Sunnyside and building what has become the business that it is today is 2 decades of personal experimentation to keep my own relationship with drinking front of mind. Up until this point, sobriety has not felt like the right fit for me. For the most part, alcohol is a positive part of my life. I enjoy having drinks on the weekends with friends, and I feel like I have my drinking in a good place at this point. But I also know that if I don't have an ongoing system to keep me accountable, things can easily kind of slip away from me and get a little bit kind of out of balance with my overall wellness goals. And so that was really the impetus of starting, the little widget that I built for myself that ultimately became Sunnyside was, I was on a sabbatical with my wife. We were traveling for an extended period of time. And without the structure of our 9-to-5 jobs and kind of the usual routine of our days, it became easy for us to go out to lunch and order a bottle of wine on a Tuesday, because why not? We were having this kind of like open, fun experience. We didn't have a rock bottom moment, but we decided that drinking was in a place that we wanted to be more conscious about the role that it was playing in our travel experience. And so I figured that there would be an app out there like we've learned to track calories and, exercise and mindfulness. I figured there'd be an app there for managing alcohol in the same way. And I was surprised to find that basically all of the apps out there are focused on and branded towards kind of the problem drinker getting sober. And there's nothing to help proactively manage the role that alcohol plays in your life if sobriety was not your goal. And so ended up building kind of a little system for myself, and ultimately it was really useful for my wife and I, and decided to see if there were others out there like me. And so far it appears that that's definitely the case.
That's great, because most companies that start from a personal frustration that's been solved, have real DNA to them. So congrats on that front. From a standpoint of, taking a look at the wearables and, be able to track, your heart rate and if you're doing anything that can show you your blood alcohol levels now or breathing into it, is this kind of turned into like a component of the wearables where, you're basically showing someone the data on that, or is it more like a therapy type of, mindfulness versus like data-driven science, or both?
I think it's definitely both. So today what we do is we really provide structure to the goal of cutting back on alcohol, right? And so for many people, they're wearing wearables, they're maybe kind of starting to understand the impact that nights of heavy drinking has on their biometrics and on other areas of their life that they're tracking.
Mhm.
Whether that's likelihood to exercise or HRV or even like quality of sleep, readiness score, etc. And so for a lot of people, that is what kind of creates that light bulb moment that like, alcohol has this pretty profound impact on the other areas of my life that I care about and that I'm prioritizing. And for some people, just seeing that data, that's enough. They say, okay, like I'm going to stop drinking or I'm going to cut back on drinking, substantially because I'm prioritizing my biometrics and kind of my health. For others, they see this data, they connect the dots between alcohol and sleep, HRV, etc., and their habits around drinking are so deeply ingrained that it's actually still quite difficult to make a change to some of those kind of routines that are leading to the impact on their biomarkers. And so Sunnyside that's where we really step in. We create a structured approach to changing drinking habits and maintaining those changes for the long term in order to improve the biomarkers that people care about, whether it's calories, exercise, calories, sleep, etc. Eventually, there will be a world where we actually integrate into those systems. So we are kind of part of your connective tissue of your overall health picture. And that becomes really interesting because we can show you the direct correlations between drinking and virtually every other area of your health that you're tracking, whether actively or passively through wearables and other apps.
So from a standpoint of the pricing of the apps at the different levels of coaching and mindfulness, talk about that because you got some big investors in there. And, I would look at this and I would say this seems like more of a friends and family round. And it seems like we've got some pretty big investors in there. So, first talk about the revenue model, if you will, and if there's a partnership model with that. If, we got a lot of health clubs and fitness studios in urban markets and people don't show up on a Saturday morning, mostly because of drinking the night before. So maybe that's something they can intercept, and then talk about how you kind of address the TAM, total addressable market, and got these VCs to say, hey, this is a big enough opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start with it's great. I'll start with the business model. So we are a consumer subscription app. So it's a free trial followed by a $99 per year annual subscription. And that's for our base plan, which includes kind of basic coaching plus this planning, tracking kind of data system. And then we have a premium tier, which has a little bit more hands-on proactive coaching, which is $298 per year. So it's a little bit of a higher price point, but you get a lot more kind of hands-on, one-on-one human support. For both of these plan tiers, based on where folks are kind of starting and the average amount spent on alcohol per month, the ROI of a $99 subscription is extremely high. We're generally saving people, 30% of their monthly budget on alcohol, and that for many people pays itself off in a number of weeks for the whole year. And so it's a pretty easy value proposition for us to deliver directly to consumers, which is the model today. We are definitely looking as kind of the next phase of the business. We just closed our Series A with some great investors, as you mentioned, to open up B2B channels and opportunities to distribute Sunnyside through gyms and health club owners to reach a health conscious audience who may be interested in also making a change to their drinking. And we operate really well with kind of that broader health and wellness ecosystem that I think creates for some really interesting partnership opportunities. So that's kind of where we are today. Definitely kind of B2B, as you might imagine, becomes a more important part of our story in this next phase. And we're definitely looking to chat with folks who are interested in potential partnership. On the TAM side, actually, for the venture case, it actually wasn't particularly difficult to create this the opportunity, to paint the picture of the opportunity as a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. 70% of U.S. adults regularly consume alcohol, and about 30% of drinkers drink more than the healthy amount as kind of defined by the CDC. And so that gives us like a TAM of 70 million US adults just here domestically who are drinking more than a healthy amount, and yet who are not necessarily open or interested in the idea of complete sobriety.
What is it? What is a healthy amount or a acceptable amount?
Yeah, so the CDC guidelines, which are actually quite liberal, are 8 drinks per week for women and 14 drinks per week for men is considered moderate drinking underneath those thresholds. Around the world, those thresholds are becoming a lot more conservative. So Canada recently shifted their guidelines to 2 drinks a week as kind of like a true low risk kind of healthy amount. And so even with that, what is considered, I would say, a pretty generous threshold in the US, you're still talking about 68 million people who are drinking at or more than that level. And so for us to kind of build the market case towards getting to 1 million paying subscribers, it doesn't take massive penetration into that population for us to build a really meaningful business here. And our approach is so differentiated. Our kind of moderation first, positive and proactive approach to healthier drinking just creates a much wider entry point into this audience than the kind of limiting services of alcoholism, recovery, and sobriety, which only represents a small fraction of the opportunity from our view of the world.
If you take a look at a lot of the the corporate wellness or the employee benefits programs, they've all got sleeping, smoking cessation plans up there. They've got weight loss programs. They've got meditation. So I think this would be a natural fit
Absolutely.
to have it at the corporate level. If it was not, if it's, it might have to be somewhat anonymous because if you're logging in there, you basically, it's a tell to HR that I've got some issues that I want to try and fix that I might not want to tell you.
Yeah, I will say though that our approach being about kind of proactive management of drinking is really aimed at reducing a lot of that stigma, right? So we're not here to say, hey, you're an alcoholic, you've got to go totally sober, you've got this huge problem. Rather, we're saying like, hey, you drink and you care about your health. So you should be managing the role that alcohol plays in your life. And I think with that messaging and again, with the bright, positive branding of, getting started early and kind of celebrating the mindful drinking journey, I think that we can actually activate more end users through employer channels than, a service that's coming in and saying, hey, you're addicted, you've got a problem, let's work on recovery, right? That language is very limiting in terms of the addressable audience, especially coming through the employer. And we really kind of sidestep a lot of that with our approach.
When you take a look at the age group, cohorts, where are you seeing the most traction?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we have a meaningful population. So I'll start by saying that 70% of our population is women. So it seems like there's women are more open to maybe getting started on the journey to mindful drinking from what we've learned so far. Although I think many men have been successful on the program and it certainly works for both. And we've actually got pretty interesting dynamics when it comes to age demographics. We've got a large population of folks who are in the 21 to 25-year-old camp who are, the kind of Gen Z, taking a very differentiated approach to alcohol broadly, and who are using us to kind of stay mindful. And then we've got a ton of folks who are in the 40 plus and even 60 plus range who are approaching different points in their life, whether it's, early empty nester to kind of approaching menopause, and alcohol, the way that your body processes alcohol changes as you age, as we all have probably observed in our own, evolution of our own hangovers. And so lots of folks are kind of, awareness is being built around the impact that alcohol has at these various life stages. And people are finding us as a way to change deeply ingrained habits that have maybe developed over tens of years.
As you take a look at the younger generation and all the options that they have now, and all these drinks that are basically, infused with, whether it's like a Red Bull or a Monster, and then it's, got a couple of shots in it. Do you think the problem is getting worse? Do you think we're getting better? Obviously, drunk driving is down dramatically, thankful to Uber and Lyft probably. But how severe is the problem? Because everyone talks about opioids and they talk about fentanyl, but they're not really talking about, the mass market, which is people drinking beer and chugging down, bottles and all these new tequila, which I don't drink. My Nexium does not work well with the. It doesn't eradicate the heartburn from tequila. So all the proliferation of these drinks, obviously is the anti-halo or the anti-wellness movement. How bad is it?
Yeah, I think that alcohol overuse is a public health crisis hiding in plain sight. The penetration of drinking and the normalcy of kind of drinking and often drinking in excess is a pretty big problem, I would say, and a precursor to things like obesity and diabetes and, increased hospital visits, lots of impact on the health system that kind of unchecked alcohol overuse creates and precipitates. Generationally speaking, it does sound like Gen Z, from kind of the data that I've seen, is reconsidering the culture of binge drinking, especially in college and these other environments that have been traditionally very heavy drinking. And so it seems like awareness of alcohol's impact on health has penetrated more broadly in that generation than maybe in mine and generations before me. Still a huge problem, and kind of alcohol overuse is still, I would say, one of the most expensive kind kind of drivers of cost in the health system that we have today. But maybe getting better as we kind of look at the younger generations. Still a ton of work to do, though, I would say, to kind of shift the frame from this language of recovery and addiction and like problem drinkers versus everybody else into, hey, alcohol is something that we should learn to enjoy in moderation. Just like we know that things like sugar and saturated fats aren't great for us, but most of us don't cut those things down to complete zero. It's more about, consuming them mindfully and within limits in order to enjoy them and also minimize the downside impact on our health. I think alcohol is going in that direction a little bit more of.
Yeah, it all just turns into sugar anyway, right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. And so in the next 10 years, I think people will have that elevated awareness. They'll have more options in terms of, other ways to achieve mood alteration that maybe are lower impact on our health. And alcohol, I think, will still be part of the portfolio of mood alteration, but not as dominant as it is today.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like walking around the city. I pass by like Dylan's Candy Bar, and I pass by like It's Just Sugar or It's Sugar. And these kids are just in there, getting their fix early in life, so they can continue that forward. Last question for you here before we break. What are some of the aha moments? You got one or two, little stories that you can tell us about? Wow, I didn't even know that it would impact somebody in this way, or someone's an ambassador or advocate or now an evangelist of Sunnyside?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we've helped thousands of people change their lives profoundly by opening the door to them to a new way of kind of establishing their relationship with alcohol. I think the biggest aha moment for us is really the validation of this thesis that there are a ton of people out there who can really benefit from changing their relationship with alcohol, and yet who up until this point, like, have just refused to get started because sobriety has been the only goal presented to them in the market today. And so our biggest aha is like, the TAM here feels real, that non-sobriety and non-abstinence-based programming like ours has a much better opportunity to kind of penetrate into the popular wellness conversation. We talk to folks all the time, who have profoundly improved their relationships with their spouses, with their children, with their coworkers, with just these kind of little nudges in the right direction. And it continues to give us great confidence that we're onto something really meaningful here in terms of building a great business, but more importantly, having a really positive impact on the lives of our members.
Yeah. Well, the thing I love about your business model is you're not going to extremes. You're accepting that there are social norms and that those aren't going to be necessarily changed overnight or eradicated,
Right.
Especially with the marketing that all these, new brands and celebrities and even athletes, and owners of sports businesses are now like, adding alcohol to their portfolio, which I think is, should be a sin tax on that.
Right.
If you want to be an athlete, like stay an athlete. Somebody else can invest in the next, alcoholic brand. And from a standpoint of getting into the corporate wellness market or getting in partnering with clubs, I feel like health club operators and those that are listening now, you really got to think about the entire success of your member, and that includes everything they're doing inside and outside the club. And that having alcohol at night and having that sit and turn into sugar, is a main component to not reaching your fitness goals. So I love what you're doing. Congrats on the round. I think that's a big, marker for you to do. And I think it's because you've approached it, in a way that feels right and not trying to, change habits, because habits are not easily changed. And some people think that they can do that. And you kind of went through it, mindfully. So
yeah, and it's about gradual change, right? It doesn't need to be so absolute and all or nothing. It's about gradual changes with huge, profound impact across the spectrum of wellness. So I definitely appreciate the words.
Great. Well, we got our term HALO, Health, Active Lifestyle, Outdoor. Feel free to use it. And we'll try to get rid of the word wellness, but we're sticking with the word mindfulness, and we're sticking with Sunnyside. So anything we can do to help you get into the channel, we appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm reachable at nick@sunnyside.co for anyone who's interested in having a conversation. We'd love to chat.
Awesome.